Welcome back, everybody. In this video, I'm going to be going over a question I saw in the GD&T discussion subreddit. So the question on the subreddit was basically that the poster had a flange and it had a datum structure and some geometric controls, and they said, how does this datum structure work in terms of constraining the part? How do I determine tolerances for the geometric controls without knowing the tolerances of the sizes or having information on the mating part? And then I'm going to go over some information on whether or not this is actually the best datum structure. So as the poster had it, without any controls, the part's able just to move around and rotate. Datum feature A, however, constrains 3 degrees of freedom. So it constrains the up, down, the tilt in both directions, but it is still able to move left and right, backwards and forwards, as well as rotate. Datum feature B, being the outside of the flange, the outer diameter, then controls the left, right, forward, backwards. So now the part is able to rotate. And then finally, datum feature C is this press fit pin, or this interference fit pin, which fully constrains the part. So now all 6 degrees of freedom are locked. Now onto the question of, can we determine the geometric control tolerances without knowing the size tolerances or without having information on the mating part? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. We cannot accurately create a geometric control tolerance that guarantees 100% interchangeability while granting the machine shop or the manufacturer the maximum amount of tolerance. In this case, you might just have to go to the machine shop who's going to make this part, especially if this is just a one-off, and say, well, what tolerances can you hit? And then work with them in that way. If this is going to be a large production run, step one is going to be figuring out the size tolerances that are acceptable and figuring out the mating part size tolerances and geometric control tolerances. And because this is a flange, a lot of the information should be out there. Flanges are fairly heavily standardized at this point. So you should be able to find that information online or by talking to an expert. And finally, I'd like to look at whether or not this was the best datum scheme for this part. And I've designed a few pressure vessels, and the approach taken in the example was not exactly the approach that I would have typically taken. So let's look at how the part is actually used. I think the original poster was on the right track with the datum feature A. You want to have your pressure vessel mating faces in full contact, but then they were kind of off with datum feature B. The outside of a flange doesn't really control anything typically. Maybe there's a different case in their application, but typically the outer diameter of these flanges is just open to the atmosphere. So as far as a datum goes, it's not actually very useful because it's not physically constraining the part. So in their case, the locating pin, which is an interference fit, would be my selection for datum feature B, as it would control most tightly the movement sliding around on top of the datum feature A. And then finally, the clearance studs would lock in that final degree of rotation. And then I would locate the outer diameter, possibly with an LMC control, to that datum scheme. Anyways, I hope this was useful for the original poster, and if anyone's going ahead and designing their own flange or pressure vessel, hopefully this is also useful. So have a good one.